Well, you wouldn't give a machine gun to a terrorist, so why would you give more money and more power to a rotten regulator? Hi, I'm Brad Hilder. I'm a member of the Vet Reform Network. I'm known for my diplomatic and subtle approach to public matters. ASQA is going to go to a so-called full cost recovery model as of July 1st next year. So in the meantime, we're getting a lot of rearranging of deck chairs where the government has announced a review into ASQA, an ongoing one. It'll take a year to a year and a half to make sure that it does an even better job than it's already doing now, and look for any opportunities to do an even better job than it is right now. What it's not doing, the Australian government that is investigating all the breaches of the Act by the Australian Skills Quality Authority, ASQA, all the abuses of process, and all the unethical conduct, the defective administration of ASQA against largely small, mid-sized private RTOs. You'll note that TAFEs get very specialised, more careful treatment. But anyway, that's another matter. I'm not going to talk about that now. What is interesting, the full cost recovery model means that the appearance must be given that the regulator is good to go. Well, unfortunately, it's never been good to go, and it's certainly not good to go now. It is regarded as a less than model litigant at the Australian Administrative Appeals Tribunal, the AAT, and that's damning. All government agencies must be model litigants. So we have a background of enormous discontent. Most of the private RTOs, if not all of them, and probably the government RTOs as well, the TAFEs, are angry or deeply afraid, or both, but in any case, very suspicious of any contact it has with ASQA, and for good reason. They're just a bunch of punitive thugs running around destroying quality training organisations. That's not tolerable. It just isn't. It's even worse, the fact that they seem to not catch any of the big guys that do all the most harm. That seems to be left up to people like the Federal Police and consumer affairs bodies around the country. So it doesn't catch the big guys that do the most damage, and it doesn't prevent them, but it does wreck quality family RTOs, and it does wreck people's lives. So, of course, the full cost recovery for ASQA isn't necessarily a done deal. There's a disclaimer that states that based on public feedback, maybe there won't be full cost recovery in July next year for ASQA, or maybe that it will look different. That's the disclaimer, but we all know what's going to happen. So, who is collecting the feedback from the public, particularly RTOs, owners who are specifically named in the feedback survey notes? ASQA is. ASQA is going to receive and process the feedback from RTOs about how money will be collected off them in order to provide money to ASQA. And ASQA will determine how, by processing this information, how happy RTOs are about this. Now, we all know how ASQA operates. Well, those of us in the industry do. They simply exclude anything they don't want to hear in any report, and make and accentuate anything that suits their purpose, i.e. getting more money and more power. So we have a taxpayer-funded body, ASQA, collecting and processing information about the money it's going to get off your RTO and whether it even should get it in the first place. Jeez, I thought after seeing the entire series of Yes Ministers and Yes Prime Minister, I'd seen it all. I'm sure there's an episode actually that does cover this kind of nonsense. ASQA is not held to account. The ASQA employees are highly paid. I think the Chief Commissioner gets a salary package not far off that of the Prime Minister for doing a really rotten job. In fact, they all have, and they always have, since 2011 when they came into being. They've done a really rotten job. Training is not better. They've driven down the reputation of the vast majority of quality training providers. And in fact, all that's happening is that RTOs are being burdened with ever more invasive and horrible bureaucratic nonsense. Max Weber, who was the guy responsible for setting up, codifying and describing bureaucracy as a means of managing large organisations, including governments, did warn a long time ago that bureaucracy could be used to practice social tyranny, and that's what's going on. If you think I'm exaggerating, just go and talk to a few RTO owners I can put you in touch with and a few consultants who know the truth. All right, so let's have a little look at some of the joyful stuff that is contained in the cost recovery. Now, well, it's proposed, let's put it this way. One of the beautiful things is that they are now, will be able to charge for every single non-compliance they find. Now, we all know how massive and complicated training packages are. We know how complicated the standards can be. We know how nebulous the standards can be. There are literally hundreds of non-coms you could find if you really wanted to with any organisation. ASQA itself is critically non-compliant and always has been. So imagine a rogue regulator like ASQA tasking one of its stellar auditors with getting to the bottom of a problematic RTO. It'll be private, it'll be fairly small, maybe large enough to get some serious cash out of though. Think they wouldn't do it? Look at their history. Look at their reputation at the Administrative Appeals Tribunal. And I don't know, call me suspicious. I mean, my own RTO was, full disclaimer, my own RTO was completely wrecked by ASQA. It was deliberate, it was premeditated, it was done in bad faith. There were 51 breaches of the Act. The entire process of 9 months that we put up with was unethical. So I think there is a big problem here. What's to stop a government agency like, hypothetically speaking, a TAFE, making a complaint about a private RTO? Hypothetically speaking, to ASQA, another government agency. Don't know. And in any case, if this event was to occur, surely somebody would get wind of it and be able to get all the documentation under FOI request. Surely that would be enough of a deterrent for the regulator. And stop laughing. All right. Now, I'll just go through, you'll really enjoy this, because what I'm going to do is just quickly go through a few of the highlights from cost recovery, because it's all about getting much, much, much more money. Okay, application. Now, the first bit is beautiful because it gives us a few, I don't know, what would you call them? Token fee decreases. So, beautifully, the lodgement fee, right? Lodgement fee for application for renewal of registration goes down from $500 to $320. Apparently it costs ASQA quite a bit of money for you to lodge an application with them, but they're reducing it. Application to amend registration, there's a lodgement fee for that, and that is also going down from $500 to $240. And I think you can see how thoroughly and fairly they've gone ahead with, a proper review of what their costs truly are. However, if you intend to renew your course accreditation, there's an assessment fee for that, and that's going from $0 to $1,100. If you want to renew your course accreditation, you have to pay an application assessment fee. But good news here, it's staying the same. It's remaining at $7,570. All right, what else have we got? We've got some beauties here. The application to amend an accredited course, right? You just want to make an amendment to an accredited course. There's a lodgement fee for that. It's going up from $1,145 to $2,000. Okay, so that's a bit of joy for you. The annual registration charge, the ARC, we even got an acronym for it, the ARC, for providers range from $1,200 per year to $17,500 per annum. Now on to the truly new fees. Okay, I think you'll enjoy these because I think they're quite creative. I mean, I'd never thought, it never crossed my mind that you would even put such numbers on such little things. But anyway, here we go. If you're an accredited course owner, so not just a provider, but you're an owner as well, there's an annual registration charge, an ARC of just a flat $1,200. Also new is a fee. If you decide to take ASQA, if you have the temerity to take ASQA to the Administrative Appeals Tribunal for review, ASQA itself will charge you $6,150. Think about that, $1,150 to take them to the AAT so that you can prove that they've done some damage to your company by doing something wrong. You pay for that. There's also a new thing called a strategic review. It is unclear what this is. And there's a fee attached to that, surprise, surprise. That fee is $915. No idea how they got that for something we don't know. Anyway, also, and this one is really joyful, the number is not so big, so I think we can all rest assured that this is fair and reasonable. If you request information through FOI, they're going to charge you $147 to respond. So, right, okay, so what happens with this is you ask for documents under FOI. ASQA says we're not giving you any because we've got all these escape clauses. For this, you pay $147. And as we know, if they do release a document, it's going to be some administrative nonsense between something and something. It won't mean anything at all. So I think some of these things actually qualify as, as lines in stand-up comedy, unless you happen to be paying for them, of course. And I think the other part that we need to address finally with this whole full cost recovery nonsense is what we're going to get for this, because none of this stuff gives you, none of the fees I've talked about before give you anything at all, which is interesting because in normal business, you get something when you pay, and you're entitled to know exactly what is item for item and every part of those, of the work service provided. So the services that ASQA will have to learn to provide make for interesting reading. It is going to provide the service of industry engagement. So already we've got comedy. They're going to provide education and awareness. But how on earth are they going to do that? They don't understand compliance in the first place. ASQA doesn't understand compliance. It also doesn't understand any of the industries that we serve either. So that should be fascinating. Stakeholder management, whatever that is, something I have to learn how to provide. Regulatory reporting, they're going to provide that. So that's usually just a happy shit about how fantastic they're doing and how crap the entire RTO sector is. But they're going to have to do more of it, apparently. They're going to have to respond to closure of registrations. Why bother? I mean, what would be the point? Who cares? And they're going to embark on continuous improvement projects. Now, this one I find most interesting. It implies either they haven't been doing any continuous improvement since 2011, which, frankly, based on all the available evidence, is likely to be the case, or that they have been doing continuous improvement and it's all been garbage, because they've just got worse and worse, if anything. They certainly never saw a law they didn't like to break. And also this beauty about regulatory support. Have we got anybody to provide the PD for this? Because they don't understand regulation except in as so far as they can use it to destroy private training providers. To sum up what's going on here, I think is this particular line in the cost recovery proposal, full cost recovery proposal. ASQA's figure for the cost to them of initial registration of an NVR RTO for the initial triage, I'm not entirely sure what that means, I think it means, setting up a few files and folders. ASQA's figure for the initial registration of an RTO is $47,000. That's their figure that they apply across the board out of all this. This means that if you're deciding to come into the RTO sector, it's going to cost you $47,000 in fees alone, right? Just for the privilege of starting. And the figure, of course, will probably be triple that by the time you've taken into account the actual real-world commercial expenses. So there's a petition for a full parliamentary inquiry into ASQA. I believe it has the support of MP Andrew Laming. He's a good guy, so look him up. Vote for him if you're in Queensland. The petition, if you just type in the words petition ASQA inquiry into your Google, you will be able to put your name to a full inquiry where we can get to the bottom of all this nonsense and make it public. If not, what you're going to get is a really nasty rogue regulator doing things where, if they were done by the directors of a private company, would put them in jail, getting more money and more power. Like I said, I've tried to be as diplomatic as possible. I haven't told you what I really think, but these are the facts. So if you want to give ISIS a gun, don't do it. You can do as much damage to the Australian economy, in fact far more, if you allow full cost recovery to go ahead. And frankly, it's pretty much as bad just having ASQA in existence at all. Alrighty, that's enough for me. Hope I've annoyed a few people. I hope I've delighted a few people. And I hope I've given some kind of consolation to people who have experienced what it's like to have to deal with a really, really nasty group of people.